Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let's introduce our group. We are from Group 3. We'll present about relation between the human language we learn and Surah Al-Baqarah verses 32 until 33. Furthermore, for the first speaker is me as moderator, Dea Aulia Parinduri, and the second speaker is Deby, Irma, Regina, Rengganis, and for the last speaker is Ashiela Ajeng Aulia. Okay. There is a relation between the human language we learn and the verses Al-Baqarah 13:2 until 13:3. Okay, next slide we will read by Deby.
Okay, what are the problems introduced by Chomsky in his analysis of the evolution of language? In the webinar, Professor Noam Chomsky said there have been numerous analyses completed on language, both human and non-human. Noam Chomsky completed an analysis that differs any other and set a precedent for future studies. What Chomsky did in his study of language was to figure out how language has evolved over time from very basic language to the complex human language that exists today. He does this through describing two different spectrums. The first is the faculty of language in a broad sense. What the faculty of language broad sense encompasses is that language is perceived as sound and signs. It is that language is based on the perception of this sound, and the brain has the ability to assign meaning and interpret the sound for meaning. The second spectrum is the faculty of language in the narrow sense. What is the encompasses is that language is a bunch of number and math problems, and just like numbers, the computational potential for language is infinite. Chomsky replaces this term with the term recursive to emphasize that language has infinite auditory components. It is important to note that the broad sense encompasses the narrow sense, but the narrow sense only focuses specifically on the recursive aspect of language. Okay, the next slide will be explained by Ashiela Ajeng Aulia.
Okay, in staying true to the scientific method, Chomsky introduced three problems in which he is trying to solve through his analysis on the evolution of language. It is accepted by him that the controlled variable of this experiment is that all language develop from a common ancestor. The problems that arose from this common ancestor are debated as to how the language has evolved over time. The first of the three problems is that the change in language is shared versus unique in that while many animals communicate through various sounds, they eventually become what is known as the human language. The question is, that is language shared with these animal or is it unique to the human race? The second challenge is gradual versus saltational. What this question is that did the evolution of language come from gradually genetic mutation or what is it saltational or abrupt in its nature? The third and final challenge posed by Chomsky is that was the evolution of language from continuity or acceptation. In regards to continuity, it refers to the possibility that the complex language came to being through continuation of the language already in place or the language was pieced together through its own independent forms. So from Chomsky's three challenges, he was able to put together three different hypotheses to, to evaluate the evolution of language. His first hypothesis was that the faculty of language root sense is strictly homologous to animal communication. This hypothesis states that humans and animals share a few basic language structures that enhance the evolution of language. The second hypothesis is that the faculty of language broad sense is a derived, uniquely human adaptation for language, which means that the complex human language comes from independent mutation, genes that are already different uniquely from the rest of the animal world. The third and final hypothesis states that only faculty of language, narrow sense, is uniquely human. In general terms, this means that the narrow sense is a recent adaptation that applies only to the human mutation and evolution of the language. So the next slide will be read by Dea Aulia Parinduri.
Okay, next, through the studies based on the hypothesis that Chomsky complete, his conclusive findings are that the faculty of language in the broad sense apply to both animals and humans, while the faculty of language in the narrow sense only applies to the more recent evolution, the unique humans form of complex language. From this finding that the narrow sense of language is only applicable to humans opens up a whole new set of questions as to why humans were able to make the jump for animals genetically with language, while animals may apply the infinite or recursive principle to another primal factor of their life. Ultimately, Chomsky's study of language was groundbreaking in its analysis of the evolution of language from basic animals' language to the complex human language that occurred over time due to the genetic mutation. Okay, this our present about relation between the human language we learn and Surah Al-Baqarah verses 32 until 33. Thank you very much for your great attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.